In a world where everyone is screaming to be heard, the one who stays silent is the one who's heard the most. When social media turns emotion into performance, and every click is a knee-jerk reaction, it's the nonchalant, calm, cool, and unshaken who become the clearest sign of a powerful mind. This is not apathy, and it's definitely not indifference. It's a kind of inner strength found only in those who truly know themselves, who are no longer swayed by the gaze of others. They have nothing to prove, because they've already conquered themselves. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In this video, you'll understand why nonchalance is the ultimate expression of confidence. We'll break it down through the lens of Stoic philosophy and extract 10 practical lessons, from how you react, how you speak, to how you carry yourself in the world. This isn't a life hack. This is a way of life, and it starts from within. Number 1. The concept of nonchalance and the difference from insensitivity. In a world where everyone is shouting to be seen, the one who stays silent is the one who makes everyone stop and look. Composure. At first glance, it may seem like coldness, a kind of emotional detachment. But if you look deeper, you'll see it's not indifference. It's a psychological art, a deliberate choice about what truly deserves a reaction. The composed person still feels. They still crave, still chase their goals, but they don't put everything on display. They know emotions are like weapons, meant to be drawn only when necessary. When someone doesn't rush to express themselves, doesn't declare every intention or achievement, they leave others wondering, what is this person thinking? What do they want? What are they holding? That space, the space they've intentionally created, is exactly what makes others curious, cautious, and eventually influenced. No one can control someone they can't figure out, and that is where true power begins. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." The composed person doesn't perform. They don't panic today over what hasn't arrived. They live in the present with clarity. They don't rush to voice opinions because they know that what's held back often weighs more than 1,000 words spoken. The difference between composure and apathy lies in the will to stay in control. The apathetic person has disconnected from emotion. They no longer care, no longer believe in the value of feeling. But the composed person is the opposite. They still see, still understand, still feel pain, but they choose not to react on impulse. That is reason reigning over emotion, exactly in line with the core of Stoic philosophy. Look at the world of social media, where so many scream daily to be validated, flaunting follower counts, money earned, lavish meals, and places they've been. Yet there's another kind of influencer who, despite having millions of followers, chooses not to overshare. No number drops, no clout chasing. They say only what matters, release content only when ready, and remain silent when silence serves them. And because of that, the audience doesn't leave. They wait, they wonder. They're pulled into that silence, where there may be few words, but every word carries weight. The composed person doesn't let others read them easily. They walk into a room without needing to dominate it. They let others speak first, show first, reveal first, and then, when the moment is right, they say just one thing. But that one thing hits the exact gap in someone's mind. This is not detachment. It is strategic clarity, because the composed person knows one thing with intention. And in a world obsessed with visibility, The one who can stay unseen is the one truly running the game. Number 2, the art of hiding emotions. In a world increasingly drawn to emotional display and instant reactions, those who conceal their emotions are no longer seen as odd. They're the ones in control. While the crowd rushes to reveal every thought and feeling, the one who stays silent and composed becomes the calm center in the storm, the anchor in the chaos. And that isn't coldness or apathy. It's a strategy. It's an art. Philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli once emphasized, appearance is a weapon. In politics, on the battlefield, or in business, where tension and instability are the default, the leader doesn't need to shout to prove they're in charge. They only need to look like they're in control. That's the power of an unchanging face, an unwavering gaze, a voice that doesn't rise in anger. When you remain externally unmoved, you force others to guess. And in any battle of wits, the one who makes others guess is the one leading. Stoic philosophy understands this well. Epictetus, a slave who became a great philosopher, once wrote, "If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your integrity. If you need a witness, be your own." Those who are truly strong don't need to display emotions for validation. They validate themselves. And that begins with limiting what they show, not to pretend, but to prevent being manipulated by others. Stoic philosophers don't teach you to suppress emotion. They teach you to delay its display. So emotion doesn't become a weakness. Emotion is a private asset. The fewer people who see it, the safer you are. Concealment isn't deceit. It's strategic selection. You let others see only what you want them to see. Look at Roger Federer, not just a legendary tennis player, but the embodiment of composure. In heartbreaking losses, especially the 2019 Wimbledon final that stretched over 4 hours, he lost the championship by just 1 point. Federer didn't smash his racket. He didn't scream. He didn't blame. He walked to the net, shook hands with his opponent, gave a slight smile, and left the court with calm steps. In the stands, people didn't see a defeated man. They saw a true champion, because the way he accepted defeat commanded respect. That emotional control didn't make him weaker. Quite the opposite. It showed that greatness lies in not needing to prove anything. Federer doesn't need noise to be legendary. He simply makes silence louder than applause. When you master your expressions, you're mastering the entire impression you leave, and that is real power. Because in an impulsive society, the one who holds back is the one who makes the room go quiet. But if hiding emotion is the art of managing image, then not reacting is the art of controlling the outcome. Because when you don't react, you force others to reveal themselves, and that's when the real game begins. Next, we move to Lesson 3, where you'll learn how to use silence as a tactical stance and bend any situation to your advantage. Stay focused. This is the skill that makes it impossible for ordinary people to replace. Number 3, the power of non-reaction. Non-reaction doesn't necessarily mean doing nothing. All it means is that any action you take comes from a place of calm and control. Think of the deep wisdom in traditional Eastern martial arts. Don't resist your opponent's force. Yield, redirect, and use their momentum to gain the upper hand. Within that softness lies an art of control and transformation. A true martial arts master never strikes back impulsively. They wait, they watch, and then use the attacker's force to make them lose balance on their own. That is the very essence of non-reaction in Stoic philosophy. Not weakness, but the deliberate choice of the strong. In a world where everyone reacts instantly and instinctively, the one who doesn't react becomes unpredictable, formidable, and commanding. When you show no urgency, others cannot manipulate you. They can't tell what you want, can't guess what you fear, and have no way of throwing you off balance. In a poker game, the skilled player gives away no tells. Their face is still like a calm lake, and that stillness confuses opponents. There's nothing to read, nothing to predict, no opening to strike. You become a mirror, reflecting them back to themselves. They reveal their own hand. Likewise, in negotiation, if you appear eager, the price goes up. But if you remain calm, stand up to make tea, check your email mid-meeting, you send a wordless message. I don't need this game at any cost. And that's what makes you dangerous. When you don't react, you shift from being at the mercy of the situation to taking control of it. It's the same at home. When a child reacts harshly to a parent's criticism, things often escalate. But when that child chooses silence, nods, listens, the air changes. The parents lose their footing. They start questioning their own words. They adjust their tone. The child's silence becomes a kind of spiritual mirror that forces the parents to self-reflect. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about winning control over the emotional space, a power only the inwardly strong can wield. Stoicism teaches us that emotions are data, not commands. Feeling anger doesn't mean you have to yell. Feeling hurt doesn't mean you must react. A true Stoic keeps space between emotion and action. They aren't pulled by instinctual reflexes. They master themselves before they respond to anyone else. And on a deeper level, non-reaction isn't just a tactic. It's a path to healing. When you stop reacting, you break the cycle of hurt and re-hurt. You stop passing on fear. You choose to stand still like sacred ground in the middle of someone else's storm. In that stillness, there is the presence of something greater. Those who live in God don't need to react quickly because they know that God is working in the silence. They believe it's not noise, but the peace of the Spirit that brings true change. Be still and know that I am God. That one line is the ultimate model of non-reaction. Not weakness, but a radical trust in a deeper order. Non-reaction because you know you're exactly where you need to be. Non-reaction because you see beyond the current battle. Non-reaction because those who are truly confident never need to prove themselves to anyone. Number 4, psychological warfare. Silence as a weapon. Why does silence make people panic? Why can a cold stare or absolute indifference dismantle someone's entire communication strategy? In the art of psychology, especially through the lens of Stoic philosophy, silence isn't emptiness. It's a weapon, a sharp, invisible tool that can flip the game without a single word in return. In any interaction, people constantly emit signals, a glance, a sigh, a fleeting frown. Every small movement is a tell, a clue others can follow. Most people don't realize they're being read simply because they can't control their outward expressions. But someone who's truly confident, someone who has trained calmness as a way of life, is different. They understand that silence isn't avoidance, it's a deliberate psychological move. When you show nothing, no anger, no amusement, no nod, no shake of the head, you throw the other person into uncertainty. They begin to interpret, to imagine, to project meanings. And in doing so, they reveal more than you do. You, the one standing still, hold all the control in the conversation. When you react, you hand over the keys to your emotions. That's not just true of anger, but of any emotion exposed too easily. The Stoic is not ruled by outside forces. They hold their inner world like a fortress, their exterior like stone in a storm. When you can do that, you don't just seem strong, you are strong. One classic example of strategic composure is Julius Caesar before crossing the Rubicon. Faced with a direct ban on marching toward Rome, an act considered treason, Caesar didn't react right away. He stayed silent, watched, and sat in front of that fateful river for a long time. No one around him could guess what he was thinking. No expression, no hints. Then suddenly he stood up and decisively said, "The die is cast." It wasn't impulsive. It was an action that had been brewing in silence. That calm, almost chilling steadiness caught the Roman world off guard. Caesar didn't need to posture. He made an empire flinch with a single unexpected move, and a face that revealed nothing. In psychological warfare, the winner isn't the one who talks more. It's the one who makes others talk more about themselves, and the one who stays silent, the one who masters the art of not showing, guides the entire game into a fog of uncertainty they control completely. So if you want to become unbeatable in communication, start by mastering your reflexes. Don't show emotion just because someone's trying to provoke it. Don't respond just because you're baited. Let silence do your work. What do you think about the power of silence? Have you ever seen someone throw others off just by saying nothing? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your story. Number 5. The value of rarity, words, and timely appearance. At a global strategic conference, as leaders took turns speaking, unleashing a flood of data and bold commitments, only one person, a CEO of a major tech corporation, remained silent for the first 40 minutes. He didn't interrupt. He didn't nod in agreement. When the microphone finally reached him, he said just one short sentence. "I didn't come here to predict the future. I came to build it." The room went quiet. Not because he said much, but because he chose the perfect moment to say what mattered. That's the essence of composed rarity. In a world where everyone wants to be seen and heard, it's those who can hold back that truly leave a mark. Speaking less doesn't mean having nothing to say. It means understanding that words, if spoken at the wrong time, only diminish your value. Composed people don't let themselves be swept away by emotion or the constant urge to perform. They know how to wait. They let others take the spotlight, and they only step forward when it counts. Their silence becomes a kind of gravity, drawing attention not because they're loud, but because they know when to show up. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." This isn't just a reminder about time. It's a warning about how we spend our presence and our words. Truly confident people don't spread themselves thin. They are intentional with their speech, their appearance, and their emotions, saving their energy for the moments that truly matter. Because when presence becomes rare, it gains value. And when speech becomes intentional, it becomes guidance, not noise. Confident people don't need to talk more to be heard. They know that the right words at the right time can shift everything, while careless words can ruin even the best laid plans. Composure also allows them to step back without being forgotten, because their impact isn't measured by frequency, but by depth. They don't compete by being louder, but by their ability to strike the exact chord that matters, at the right moment, with the right person, in the right way. And now, we've made it halfway through this journey together. Thank you for your patience, your attention, and your reflection. Your presence here proves that meaningful values still have seekers, still have believers. Before we move on to the next part, I want to ask you one thing. What do you think reveals the most about a person's true character? Comment 1 if you believe it's how they treat people who can do nothing for them. Comment 2 if you believe it's how they handle small annoyances. Or comment 3 if you believe it's how they respect time and commitments. The answer lies ahead as we explore the difference between rushed actions and intentional ones. And you may realize, the way you spend your time might just be the clearest declaration of who you really are. Number 6, the difference between rush and deliberate action. Why are we in such a rush? Why is it that in an era obsessed with speed, from instant messages to instant success, the people who seem truly confident are often slower than the crowd? The answer lies in a core difference between haste and intentional action, a vital trait that Stoic philosophy sees as the mark of someone self-possessed, someone who has risen above reactive instinct. The modern world worships speed. People are haunted by the need to do it now, for fear of missing out or being left behind. But that very urgency exposes our greatest weaknesses: lack of preparation, carelessness, and an ego desperate to prove itself immediately. Truly confident people don't act because they're pressured to. They act because they choose the right moment. They don't follow the tempo set by others. They create their own rhythm. Their calm isn't rooted in slowness, but in the understanding that acting at the right time matters more than acting first. Stoic philosophy constantly reminds us, don't let the outside world hijack your inner state. And that's never more true than in how we make decisions. The one who can pause, step back, and observe is the one who holds a kind of power. The hasty will never grasp the power to choose timing. They aren't fooled by the world's urgency. They don't act to impress others. They act to get results. In cinema, Christopher Nolan is a vivid example of this not rushed, only right principle. The screenplay for Inception, one of the boldest explorations of dream structure, was nurtured by Nolan for over a decade. Even after the massive success of The Dark Knight, he didn't rush Inception to theaters for the sake of momentum or fame. He waited until visual effects technology could fully realize the film's layered concept. Waited until audiences were ready to embrace a complex, philosophical narrative. When the film premiered in 2010, it wasn't just a box office triumph. It became a cultural landmark. Nolan didn't chase time. He crafted the moment. And it was that patience that made Inception more than just a film. It became a phenomenon. This perfectly embodies the essence of the nonchalant. Someone who knows that patience isn't passive, it's a high-level strategy. Because while the masses scramble to grab at every opportunity, the truly confident understand this. Not every opportunity deserves their action. They wait not out of fear, but because they know to strike only when the timing tilts in their favor. And when they act, everything around them seems to freeze, because they've planned. They've observed, they aren't rushed, they're right on time. And that's what sets them apart. It makes each of their moves precise, impactful, and impossible to imitate. So next time you feel the urge to act immediately, ask yourself, is this really the best moment? Or is it just a moment others are making me feel like I have to act? A confident person never lets the world dictate their pace. They move step by step, but each step is aimed with intention. Number 7, the power of silence and its lasting impact. Silence is not emptiness. In Stoic philosophy, silence is a deliberate act, a subtle strategy where unspoken words carry more weight than 1,000 spoken ones. When the world grows noisy, when everyone is rushing to speak, to interrupt, to make their voice heard. The one who chooses silence is the one who controls the game. Silence is not just a pause. It's a space that forces others to fill in. When you remain silent in a conversation, you're not just holding back your words. You're compelling the other person to continue, to say more, to reveal more of themselves. Silence, when used at the right moment, becomes a mirror. It reflects what others try to hide. And in the game of influence and strategy, the one who gathers the most information always holds the advantage. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." This idea forms a pillar of silence in Stoic thinking. When you let go of the need to control everything, including the need to be understood, agreed with, or praised, you begin to truly master yourself. Silence at that point is no longer a sign of weakness, but a declaration of inner strength. Classical music history recognizes a master of intentional silence. Gustav Mahler, the great Austrian composer and conductor. During rehearsals, Mahler hardly spoke. He didn't shout, didn't interrupt, didn't waste a single word. Instead, he stared at the orchestra in silence for a few seconds, and with just a raised eyebrow or a subtle gesture, the musicians adjusted themselves. To Mahler, silence was also music. It was precisely the space between the notes, the parts he didn't write, where emotion rang out most powerfully. His quietness didn't create emptiness, it created depth. That's why every symphony he composed became a river of intense emotion, where listeners didn't just hear the music, they felt everything left unsaid. That's what leaves a lasting mark. A truly confident person doesn't need to prove who they are. They don't need to raise their voice. They don't need to counter every point. They know that in their silence, they are in control. In a noisy crowd, the one who stays calm becomes the center. The less you speak, the more weight each word carries. And the more precisely you master silence, the longer your presence lingers. But remember, the ability to stay silent doesn't come from personality. It comes from training. The Stoics never saw silence as a gift. They saw it as a skill, the result of disciplined inner work. And that leads us to the next part, where we'll break down how the truly unshakable train themselves to reach that level of self-mastery. What if you could stay calm in every situation, even when angry, insulted, or misunderstood? Could you stop reacting and choose a wiser response instead? In the next lesson, you'll see that calmness isn't a natural state. It's a brutally disciplined inner practice. And yes, you can master it too. Number 8, self-control and the training to achieve a nonchalant state. No one is born calm. Human instinct is to react, to lash out when insulted, to feel hurt when ignored, to push back when excluded. But the truly confident don't live by instinct. They live by choice. And to be able to choose calm over outbursts, silence over arguments, and stillness on the outside while chaos brews within, they've trained themselves like inner warriors. A person with a nonchalant demeanor is not emotionless. They still worry, still get angry, still long for things. But instead of letting emotions spill out uncontrollably, they've learned to filter, keeping what helps them understand themselves and releasing what might control them. They build a gap, a pause between emotion and action. And in that pause, they find their strength. If every small friction sends you into a rage, how can you possibly grow stronger? That question is a wake-up call. The weak react. The strong choose how and when to respond. The mirror here isn't about surface image. It's about spirit, your inner self. Every time you resist an unnecessary reaction, you polish yourself a little more. Every time you choose silence over saying something hurtful, you forge a stronger armor for your will. All of that comes from training. No one stays calm in chaos without first having faced chaos and chosen calmness. One leader once shared that each morning he spends 10 minutes in silence, watching every scattered thought drift by. Work stress, yesterday's anger, today's pressure, and slowly lets them all pass. Thanks to that habit, he walks into high-stakes meetings as if nothing happened. Calm, unreadable, unshakable, forcing others to adjust because they can't guess what he's thinking, or take the young artist pursued by every major label. While the entire industry was on edge, waiting for his decision, he stayed quiet. Not out of arrogance, but because he understood one wrong move could cost him everything. He observed, analyzed, and read every clause with care. And when he finally nodded, it wasn't a reaction. It was a deliberate move, one that made him look like he was always in control, even while standing in the middle of massive temptation. Calm doesn't mean careless. These are people with fire in their hearts, but minds cool enough not to act on impulse. They know every action carries silent power, and they choose to wield that power with wisdom. Are you training to become someone like that? Comment below. When was the last time you chose silence over reaction? And what changed after that? Number 9. The challenge of maintaining indifference, staying calm while the world rushes around you, is already a formidable test. But keeping your composure when you're misunderstood, that's the true pinnacle of inner power. People often assume that someone who stays silent doesn't care. They forget there are thoughts moving silently beneath the surface. Quiet yet deep calculations and strategies that will never be spoken aloud. Composure, when misunderstood, is easily mistaken for apathy. A non-reactive glance, a quiet nod without further explanation, can make others think you lack conviction. In a world that worships self-expression, those who don't put themselves on display are always under suspicion. But that's the test, and only those with real strength can stay still under the scrutiny of judgmental eyes and still hold on to their essence. At a strategy seminar, a marketing expert named Luke remained silent throughout the entire discussion. He offered no opinions, didn't challenge the speaker, and didn't join in any group exchanges. His colleagues saw him as passive, lacking ambition. But when it came time to present his project, the room fell completely silent. Luke's strategy, built on silent observation, refined analysis, and unspoken feedback, left everyone stunned. He didn't need to win every minor conversation. He just needed to win once, and at the right moment. It's an uncomfortable feeling to be overlooked, underestimated, even isolated for not reacting like everyone else. The composed person can't avoid moments of self-doubt. Am I going the wrong way? Should I say something just to be acknowledged? But they don't act out of a need to be seen. They act because something is worth doing and at the right time. Holding silence amid the noise is an invisible kind of strength, but a persistent one. Epictetus once wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That quote may sound paradoxical, but it forms the core of Stoicism. The courage to accept misunderstanding, judgment, even disdain, in order to protect real personal growth. The composed person doesn't seek instant agreement. They are willing to be misunderstood, as long as they don't betray themselves. That kind of strength belongs only to those who are truly confident. Composure isn't avoiding communication. It's a strategic choice. When to speak and when not to. When to step forward and when to step back. When to smile and when to keep a still face. It's how the self-disciplined control their surroundings through the calm they cultivate within. But to do this, you must grow used to the feeling of not being understood and not needing to be, at least not right away. And if you've ever stayed silent, ever been misunderstood, ever chosen not to react in order to protect your inner values, you've already come close to the highest form of Stoic strength. But there's still a deeper layer, where silence is no longer just a response, but becomes a strategic weapon. Keep going, because next we enter the final realm of power, where every unspoken moment resounds like a declaration. Number 10. The power of silence. Silence in Stoic philosophy is not the absence of words, but the presence of control. Not everyone who remains silent is weak. On the contrary, those who stay silent at the right moment reveal that they are not easily provoked, that they feel no need to prove anything. And that's precisely why they are the ones truly in control. The silence of a composed person doesn't come from confusion, but from the deliberate choice to decide when to speak. They aren't driven by emotion or by the pressure to react. They choose the timing, the method, and the target. And it's in that very space, in that silence no one can predict, that power begins to form. When you don't react, the other side is forced to guess, to assume, even to reveal their strategy. Because you give them no data, they start making up scenarios. And meanwhile, you're still there, calmly watching, holding the reins. As Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This isn't just advice for better communication. It's a profound reminder. True strength lies in self-restraint, the ability to observe, to listen, and to conserve your energy for the moments that truly matter. Because when you feel the need to always speak up, you're letting emotion take the lead. But when you can be silent without feeling anxious, you're in control of yourself. Take Warren Buffett, for example. The legendary investor is famous not just for his wealth, but for how carefully he manages his words. In shareholder meetings, he often stays quiet for a long time before answering a tough question. Sometimes he just smiles, nods, or says, "I'll think about it." But later, he'll make a move that shakes the entire market. That disciplined economy of speech gives weight to everything he says. Buffett understands. When you say less, people listen more. When you don't need to speak to be heard, you're operating on a different level of influence. But that kind of silence doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of inner discipline, a daily practice of resisting the urge to react, of separating emotion from action. Like a martial artist who doesn't waste strength, the Stoic doesn't waste reactions. They know, if you react to everything, you're being controlled. But if you know when to stay silent, you're creating influence. That's why in Stoicism, silence is a weapon. No theatrics, no need to explain, just complete self-mastery. In a world full of noise, the one who stays silent becomes the center of gravity. Not because they shout the loudest, but because they don't need to. True confidence doesn't come from speaking loudly, showing off, or reacting fast. It comes from the ability to hold back. Hold your calm. Hold your silence. Hold your control. Throughout this video, we've unpacked the power of nonchalance. From masking emotions, knowing when to stay silent, to mastering your mind in the face of chaos. A nonchalant person isn't careless. They've trained themselves not to be swept away by what doesn't matter. That's how they stay in control. What about you? Do you believe the power of nonchalance is truly essential in today's world? Choose one of the options below. 1. Strongly disagree. 2. Disagree. 3. Neutral. 4. Agree. 5. Strongly agree. If this video shifted your perspective, like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes your silence might just be the loudest agreement.